Welcome to the Thriving Musician Podcast, hosted by certified financial planner Spencer List. Tune in to hear inspiring stories from music professionals on their journey to financial independence. Plus, gain valuable insights from industry experts on how to level up your finances, career, and life. Here's your host, Spencer List.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thriving Musician Podcast. Today I have a very special guest in Jessica Muñiz-Collado. She's a music career consultant, composer and producer, and assistant professor of music business at the University of North Texas. Passionate about serving musicians, she is also the founder of NIZCO Music, a music career consulting company that helps musicians compose their careers to their own beat. Additionally, she serves as chair of the Music Industry Council for the College Music Society and serves on the education committee for both the Music Business Association and the Recording Academy, the Texas chapter, as well as being a Recording Academy voting member. As a composer and producer, Jessica has created music for numerous production companies, including MundoFOX, Univision, PBS, IMAX, and Universal Production Music, and is a published and commissioned composer with both national and international performances of her work. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks for having me, Spencer. Glad to be here.
Yes, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Tell us more about your story. If I recall correctly, University of Miami, and now you're here in Texas. That's a big move. But tell us what got you interested in music. And then also, I'd love to hear about your transition into teaching and starting your business, of course. Yeah,
I'll try and keep this brief. There's so much that goes into it. So I was born in Miami. My father's from Puerto Rico. He came at a young age. And my mother and my grandparents and that side of my family were Cuban exiles. And I say that because it's a big difference than just being an immigrant. I mean, they were kicked out of their homes. My grandfather was a POW during the Bay of Pigs. And so, a lot of that really influenced, I think, how I was raised in terms of, just keep grinding and just keep going. But, it was also reminded to me at a very young age of life is better here than what it was, from where we came from, right? So, I was very fortunate to have a family to give me a perspective of just keep going. They don't have college degrees, but, they just kept going and they managed to, just provide, shelter and food for my brother and I, growing up. And when I got into music, my brother was actually a trumpet player first. And I remember he was in his high school marching band, and I went to go to a football game one time, and I'm younger than him, and I saw the drum line, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I want to be a drummer, not knowing anything else. I just wanted to play drums. Mm-hmm. And so I just got into music when I was in middle school and started learning how to play the drums. And, every chance I could get to, watch a performance, at another high school or things like that, or just ask questions. I think that's one thing I can say that I'm very inquisitive. Like, I'll ask without the shame of like, well, you don't know this. And it's kind of like, no, that's why I'm asking. And that's okay not to know everything. And it's interesting because, I'm growing up in a time where there was no YouTube and no social media. So where everybody can just watch videos now of people giving their techniques or their, new exercise and stuff that was not available. Mm-hmm. And I went to all Title I schools in Miami, which Title I is the lowest income schools that you can go to. So, but it was fun. Like, you didn't feel like you lacked anything because the whole culture around you was just, hey, this is what it is. But we were having a great time. So I think I made the conscious decision at 16 to study music. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I knew I wanted to be in this ecosystem, right? I wanted to be under the umbrella of music. So I had auditioned to Frost School of Music, which was in my backyard. And thankfully, on scholarship, I was able to go and attend and get a degree in percussion performance. While I was at Frost, I was really leaning hard into composition, and then I didn't realize that this is an area that I really, really enjoyed. And after graduating, I ended up attending Vermont College of Fine Arts for grad school. And I studied composition there with the emphasis of scoring for media. But I do want to make this quick point of going back to asking questions. And I think what's important for musicians to know is that it's okay to admit that, you know, you don't know something. Like, at least be honest with yourself. So when we were trying to, as grad students, we get placed with a faculty advisor for a semester. And they ask you, like, who do you want to study with? And, you know, you're surrounded by this amazing faculty with these impressive portfolios. And I just remember writing for my request, like, whoever wants to take me on as a student, I'll be more than happy with it. These are my weaknesses. And I didn't want to come in with like my strengths, as a drummer, percussionist, like rhythm, it comes very natural to me, like, because I've just been doing it for such a long time. But as a grad student, harmony was something I knew I needed to grow in. And I was like, I want to strengthen my, harmony and things like that. And I want to understand this area much better. So they paired me with a jazz professor. And so I studied with this really great jazz professor named Diane Moser. She passed away not too long ago, but she really opened my eyes up to just this world of jazz. And she told me, hey, you're going to write jazz pieces and we're going to have a jazz ensemble play them for you. And it was like, I would never thought that I would write jazz. With that, I started getting other media projects, and then I was soliciting work. I was like, hey, I'm a composer. I'll do, your films for you. And I remember one of the first films I ever did was for a nature documentary about the Everglades. And it was really cool. But during that time, my mentor in film and media was Don DiNicola, who, if you see on my website, NIZCOmusic.com, you will see Don there as a co-founder with my company. And, that really, again, opened a whole new door for me in terms of a new area where I can make income as a musician. I don't just have to be a performer. Like, I can be a composer, I can be a producer. And I got to work on television shows where the producers were Oscar De La Hoya and Mario Lopez, and just kind of see this whole other world. That's the positive side. The negatives were, you sign bad deals, you sign bad publishing deals. You don't understand certain things because they're not taught to you. Typically in a traditional education, right? No one really digs deep into the business unless you know what questions to ask, or like, I want to study music business. But majority of the time, it's not like that. You either you're a performer, or you're a teacher, right? And the first stage of learning is you don't know what you don't know, and if you don't know what you don't know what to ask. So I have some thorns in my sides I have to live with, of signing things and agreeing to deals that I'm like, man, I could have done so much better. And I think that really propelled me starting NIZCO Music. And I do own the company 100%, and it's very proud for me being, a female minority to have that here and be that service to musicians. And that all came out of failures and just my flaws. It's like, hey, this sucked for me. I don't want to do this. I don't want this to happen for you. So let's, if you have questions, let's work together. And during COVID, I had a lot of musicians come and speak with me. Majority of them, though, I gave them for free. I was like, this is really, right now is not the time to get heavy clientele like to ask for money because no one's making money. But it also proved the point of we tend to think a little too linear sometimes as musicians, of like, I'm going to be performing. This is going to be my only source of income, and that's all I'm going to do. And then when the whole world shuts down and you can't play anymore, how are you going to make money? And that became the whole, really thing I was trying to preach and get out there, was establishing a portfolio career. Like, there's other ways of making income, still being in the umbrella of music. For me, on top of, doing these consulting sessions for musicians, I was also composing and producing, because you had people who would do stuff live, and now they can't do it live anymore. So they have to do it on Zoom, or they create these webinars, and now they want music, or they want sound or editing and stuff. So I was still getting work, still very active doing that, because I had a diverse portfolio. If I needed to record, this is where I guess technology really came into play. Like if I needed to record drum tracks or something, I could do that. If I needed to compose or produce something, a track for someone, which I remember even getting somebody who was doing a webinar. It was supposed to be in person, but then they said, we're going to make it into a webinar, and we want music to be in the background while people are taking the quizzes. Like the little, you know, when you do like a training session, you take a little quiz, right? We want music. And, I was like, okay. So you're making these little 20-second stems for each question, things like that. So it was just one of those where I was like, I'm very fortunate and blessed, that I was able to still sustain myself, during that time. But many musicians, they couldn't do that. So when they would work with my company, I would ask them and I say helping musicians compose their careers to their own beat. And BEAT is an acronym for business, education, artist development, and technology. And that is kind of the 4 pillars that my company stands on after surveying many musicians of like, what are the things that you wish you knew in your career that could have maybe helped you, or what did you lack that maybe hurt you? And these were the 4 areas. Mm-hmm. So technology, because it was COVID, was the biggest one. People wanted to learn how to use a basic DAW, something, either Apple Logic or Pro Tools or something. And, I had a background in that. So I was confident to teach them and help them during this time. And it was very hands-on. And as much as people have their opinions about Zoom, it's really resourceful because you can write on the screen and annotate, and they could see it in real time. So it's very hands-on. It wasn't like lecture and they're sitting there watching me. It's like, no, you're going to do this. And I've seen clients who they did an entire Easter Mass in 2 months, never touched a DAW in their life. And they were just that driven of, I need to survive. So I need to learn this. And we're in 2 parts of the country. And they were just so dedicated. She's an amazing pianist and vocal coach. And she made an entire Easter Mass on Logic and then had to create it as a virtual choir. And it was incredible. And asking her, like, did you ever think you could do this? Is like, no, I never thought I could do it, let alone in 2 months, So I don't say that so much as a testament of just what, I can provide, even though, there's a confidence that I have with that, but it's a testament of the work ethic of my clients, that they're serious. They're like, hey, I want to come in and I want to do this because I want to do this for the rest of my life. And, that's why I always give a free call in the beginning. Go, let's really talk about that. This is something serious you want to do. And it's not just, something in passing. If it is something in passing or a hobby and you still want to study, I just want to make sure we're on the same plane with that, because I don't want to waste anyone's time, and I think the other thing comes down to, we think that it's like, what drives you as a musician or, to do this career. It's like, oh, people, they want to make money. They want to make money. It's like, yes, but money's going to be the result of what you do. So it's so important to establish, what gives you a reason to wake up in the morning and do this and be part of this like shark infested water of a career where people, it's like, who do I trust and this and that. And it's not all bad, but you have to be vigilant. And if you say money, it's like, well, then go be go work in finance or something else like that. So if for me, my drive and my why is to support the future of music. So whatever that looks like, I want to be able to do it. And I'll take a break there. And that's, then that led me, the teaching question. Starting my business, I was teaching down when I was still in Florida. I was teaching more music production, commercial music, like music industry based classes. But then I get a phone call one day to come and apply for the music business program here at University of North Texas. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is UNT. UNT was on my radar when I was in high school. It's like, maybe, I might go and study there, some great faculty. And I remember thinking like, this is a big program. It's a graduate program. It's an MBA. And, why me? And, obviously, long story short, they see my background, they see my company, and they're like, we want to give you a shot. And so here I am 3 years later and still kicking.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I heard a lot of great mindset from you, and you also said a lot of quotes that I've said before, like when you provide value to the world, money is a consequence of that. The goal is not, money is not the goal. It is the consequence. So I want to know a little bit more about, with your upbringing and your family history, going to Title I school, what was your relationship with money then? And how has that changed now, given where your life is and kind of where you are financially now?
Mm-hmm. I think it came down, growing up, you see certain things like, oh, we can't spend money here. We can't do that. I remember, there was times where you wanted to do something as a kid, but, parents can't do it. Like I remember I got offered to play pit for Carolina Crown, like marimba, because one of our instructors in my high school band had done Carolina Crown, and they were short that year. And they were like, hey, do you want to do it? It's like, but it's going to cost you like $2,500 back then. And it was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And it's kind of like, oh man, like I could have missed out an opportunity. But I have to realize that, well, I know now that it's like opportunities, they really are everywhere.
Yeah.
You just got to find them. And then if you absolutely feel like there's no opportunity, you got to create one. And that's worked out well for me. So I would say like now, coming out of that like upbringing of just not penny pinching per se all the time, because I said, there's things where it's like, I want to work for money, but I've also learned that money is not going to give me the fulfillment that I get from just servicing, being of service to music. The money has come over time. I mean, some people, they want it right away. Some people, you're okay with waiting. And it really comes down to lifestyle. Like I don't drive a fancy car, but I'm okay with that. Like I can wake up, smile, and like I get to do something that some people envy. I get to be a musician. I get to work in a creative space. And I'm grateful for that, for all of it. And I get to meet new people all the time. And I also think that when trying to find work, things have kind of changed where our generations past, like our parents' generations or my parents, it's one of those where this idea of staying at one job for 20 years, like the first job you get when you're like 20, you stick with it. It's like, no, like things change because you have to be very aware of what's happening economically, what's happening globally. Like I tell that to my students and my clients, it's like, you got to pay attention to what's happening, not just in the music industry or in your space, but what's happening out there in the world, because what happens out there will influence what's happening in your world. And I'll give a quick example. We had a guest speaker come from Con Selmer and speak to my music business students. And he was talking about how they could not make clarinets for a while because they couldn't get the nickel because Russia had bought all the nickel for their weapons with their war in the Ukraine. And that affects the music industry, right? You can't make clarinets. And if you do make clarinets, what does that do with the price? And, so it's one of those, if you learn and you're aware of what's happening, it's like, maybe you can come up with a solution, another alternative to nickel, or what can happen here, and then kind of turn on that entrepreneurship brain and be of service that way. So, I mean, I'm just really like, I have what I need, and, I'm just building my company and I'm working with students. So it's like, really, I'm not freaking out about money.
That's amazing. So for listeners who we're past the step of trying to figure out how to make money, we're trying to figure out what to do with it. Can you tell us what your strategy is? How are you saving for the future? How are you setting yourself up long term?
Yeah. So definitely have my retirement, right? I got that real early. And I made sure that I maxed out, like, for example, when I was teaching in Florida, the retirement system that we used there, we had certain tiers. And I remember thinking, well, no matter what, I'm making more teaching here than what I made prior to this job. So I'm going to max out my tier.
Amazing.
And so I was like, let me do that and just kind of build from there. Now moving to Texas, there's a Texas retirement system.
Yeah.
And, you have to stay vested, I think. You have to work 5 years in order to be vested and get a pension there. So that's my goal. I'm like, all right, let me do my 5 years and then do that. I also have my own Roth IRA that I contribute to. My husband and I also have our own, another one aside. So it's kind of like we have money spread out on top of our little savings, and even small things too. Like my bank allows me to, I set up a method where they pull from my checking and throw it into savings in small increments when I don't even realize it. So it's like if I don't use my debit card for 3 days for something, then money's being pulled. They're like, oh, you didn't spend money? Well, we're taking this much and we're throwing it into savings.
Oh, that's cool.
And so they're automatically saving on my behalf. And there's a cap, like they'll never pull out more than a certain amount that I have allocated. And then it's a good and a bad thing. It's like, it's good because 1 minute you're looking at it and your savings, you're like, wow, I have more money this month. And then if you spend a little more the other month, you're like, wow, where'd my money go? Did I spend that much? And then you realize, no, I didn't. It's because they're pulling it away. And so I'm like, okay, I need to slow down, so with my spending. So, every penny counts, be realistic. I tell musicians too, like when they negotiate for jobs, it's just actually on a phone call yesterday with a friend of mine who's wants to apply for a job, and the job is not close by. It's about 2 hours away from where they currently live. And it's like, well, I don't know, like to move, to sell my house, to do all that. And I was like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, don't do that for 2 hours. Like, well, but then I'm driving 4 hours a day. And it's fine. Like, yes, that does suck too. So this is where the negotiation comes in.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, and I say this to anyone, if you are capable of doing a job and you look at the qualifications and you see that, hey, you know what? I have about 30% of these qualifications. Apply for a job. Apply for it. I think this is mostly with women. We have a tendency to expect, like, we need to know that 90% of the qualification, we check those boxes, and it is not the case. So just go for it. And, if you're capable of doing it, obviously be realistic. Like, I would never apply to be a music therapist because I don't have a certification in music therapy. Right. So it's, there's certain things that do require extra certifications. But anyway, this person, it was like, well, I don't know. I was like, first of all, put the job in and cross that bridge when you get there. Right. If they call you for an interview. If they call you for an interview, then you can ask them, let's negotiate the salary. If they say we can't negotiate the salary, it's locked in. Okay, then let's negotiate the work environment. Let's do some hybrid days because I live 2 hours away. And then if you want me to move to a place that's more expensive and this and this and that, this job is very much able to be done remotely so many days a week. And, and so don't be afraid to negotiate and ask. The worst they can tell you is no. And at that point, you have a decision to make. And there's a great article on LinkedIn, and I really do believe this. Sometimes it's better to apply for jobs when you're already in a job because you're not as desperate.
Mm-hmm.
When you absolutely like have no job or you're in a position where you're like, I hate my job. I'm so desperate to get out. When you start applying for jobs, you're more than likely to take and just accept things as they come rather than challenge it. So if you're in a position where it's like, I like my job, but let me see what else is out there. You can go and apply and then ask for things. Ask for a higher salary. Ask for this. Ask for remote. Ask for whatever. And if they say no, you're like, okay, you're still fine. You have nothing to lose at that point.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. What are your thoughts on how I wrote a very comprehensive guide on how to navigate a layoff, far beyond just how to find your next job. Any thoughts on your opinions and thoughts on all of the layoffs that have been happening this year?
Yeah, I think, it's hard. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm 100% in tune of what's happening because it varies by state. It varies by location. There's things that, like, for example, in the state of Texas, we have the Texas Music Office, right? And when I lived in Florida, I don't recall anything like that, where I was like, there's a dedicated office to making musicians thrive in the state of Texas. Like, that is pretty cool, and it comes out of the governor's office. And it's like, wow, they really value this. And, they have support networks and things like that for musicians to keep them going. So I think it's going back to what's happening with your government, your economy, what's happening globally, because policy has a lot to do with it. Like, just because you live in a state that may have all the record labels or a thriving area, it may not necessarily be the best place for you as an independent artist in a certain stage of your life, So it's just be mindful of that and cost of living, and just look at your local state resources. What do they offer, in terms of unemployment benefits, things like that. All of that is important. And, we don't think about it because we're just excited, to do the job or whatever. But, the music industry is really a marathon. It's not a sprint. You got to be doing it a long time before you start really seeing like the results and the financial benefits that come across the other end.
Delayed gratification is super powerful. Sometimes it's hard to do that, but once you experience the gratification later, then you can do that for things further down in life and really push some things aside. Can you tell us, in the pre-show forum, you said you swam with sharks in a cage multiple times. Why did you do that?
Yeah. Because I was stressed out. The music industry was stressing me out, so I needed to feel something else. No. No, yeah. So before leaving Florida, I was really big into diving, scuba diving, something I picked up from my dad, and love diving. And when my dad turned 60, I told him, he's a little more of an adrenaline junkie, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, let's go shark diving." So we did that, and that was quite the experience. No cage, and you're looking at like 6 to 8 foot bull sharks, coming at you. And at the same time, it gave me a new appreciation for sharks. Like, number one, I see why they call them bull sharks, because they kind of come up to you really fast and like a bully, they're coming up, but then they kind of like swim away. And I was like, okay, well, we're in their environment. And that was one thing always that, as a diver, not to get too off topic, but it's one of those, like, by the time you see whatever freaks you out in the water, it already saw you first.
Oh yeah.
It's,
you need to respect.
So don't panic, just kind of like swim out of the way or whatever. But we did that. It was fun that we decided to do it again, right? A few years later down in the Bahamas. And, so I don't think I'll push it a third time, just because, Murphy's Law or whatever, but two times is enough.
Yeah, talk about, taking risks. I don't know the stats on swimming with sharks without a cage, but I wonder how it compares to, jumping out of planes and jumping off bridges. And
yeah, I can never jump out of a plane. I'll never do it. So
same.
That's but that's it.
What's your definition of a thriving musician?
I think for that, it's going to be different for everybody. And, your definition that I had asked you, is a great one. It's right on point. I think one of the things we have to be careful when we define that is we can't compare it to other people.
Yeah.
Everybody has different circumstances, different lifestyles. Again, going back to just even upbringing, culture, I'm a Latina, but not all Latinas are the same, just because, Mexico is very different from the Caribbean, very different culturally, So it's something that when we define it, we have to, for me, it's looking back on what drives me, like what brings me that fulfillment, that satisfaction. And again, it's going back to supporting the future of music. So if I'm doing that at whatever capacity, I'm thriving. So I think it connects back to the why, what anchors me down, and compete against myself, not everybody else out there, because there's so many people doing the same thing. I look at the graduates, I'm on a couple of right now dissertation committees for doctoral students who are getting a related field in music business. And it's like, there's so many saxophonists out there. And they're all competing for that one academic job. And it's kind of like, why? Why academia? Nothing, wrong with it, but it's like, what do you really want to do? And I think if we are honest with ourselves on what we really want to do, and we start pursuing it, like the thriving comes with it. And going also back lastly with the portfolio career, your sources of income don't have to come from one place. They can come from multiple skill sets that you have. So you have to do like a deeper analysis on what your strengths, what your weaknesses are, what you can offer, your opportunities and threats. Like it's essentially a SWOT analysis of the self. And from there, I think that could help really strengthen, everyone's individual definition of what it is to be a thriving musician, if that makes sense.
Well said. How can listeners learn more about you and or get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can visit NIZCOmusic.com, NIZCO music.com. And you can follow me on social media too. Send me a message at NIZCO Music. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and say LinkedIn and Instagram the most. And send me a message. I love connecting with other musicians, just hearing their stories. I'm just going to put a selfish plug out there. When you go to our website, please check out our affiliates. We are affiliated with Music Dash, which is a free music distribution company, meaning if you want to put your music out there on Spotify, Apple, sources like that, and you don't want to pay a yearly fee because you just want to test it out, Music Dash is a source that we work with. So you could set up a free account there. And we have other affiliates there on the site. And then we have our Beat Shop, which is a merchandise line of NIZCO Music, where when you buy items from the Beat Shop, it funds opportunities for musicians to get free beat sessions. So it's not that, I'm walking around like making all this money for me from the Beat Shop. It's more of like, hey, this school wants to have a session, but like they can't afford to pay for a session. It's like, cool, the funding comes out of the Beat Shop. Yeah. So if there's something there that someone likes, you want to buy a shirt, sticker, or coffee mug, a lot of coffee mugs on there.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely you could check that out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and I look forward to seeing you again in person, hopefully soon. And if you enjoyed this and thought it was insightful or helpful, feel free to share with another thriving musician, or better yet, leave a review on Apple Music or wherever you listen to podcasts, and I hope you have a great day. Keep thriving.
Want more ideas, tools, and resources on how to achieve financial independence? Visit motifplanning.com. Read the leading financial blog for music professionals, sign up for the financial literacy newsletter, and keep thriving.